Bitcoin is a mere 13 and a half hours away from confirming its next major signal on a higher term time frame. And today, Friday, is a major closure for CME, closing off the weekly. And we'll also be looking at actually some other market participants, seeing what other coins are showing some strength or showing some weakness on top of Bitcoin's current moves, which I think do provide some extra light as to what's most likely to happen. So first things first, we'll start it off with some daily statistics running over here. Starting off with Friday, which has seen a slightly higher probability in favor of closing negatively than positively for the year of 2024. I do expect that this is going to be more or less 50-50 by the end of the year, but realistically, what we're interested here is in the percent gain and percent loss on average for Friday, which is 2% and 2.25% respectively. So that is likely going to be the range for today. And if it is indeed the range for today, we're probably going to be a pretty damn good what's the word I'm looking for, confirmation that our higher term timeframes will indeed confirm the next major signal, which in this case to the upside, if Bitcoin were to play at about a 2% move, we'd be looking, somewhere around about $65,000, give or take, $100 from that number. Into the downside, about 2.25% shaved off of the current open would put Bitcoin perhaps all the way down, closer to 62,600. So likely the range for today, which doesn't really do anything for either side as far as today's closures do go, but Bitcoin consolidating within this region right here is exactly what Boolahs want to be seeing if things are indeed going to be taking another leg up. Probably not today or tomorrow, but likely next week, assuming that everything does kind of stay steady here. So moving on from there, I do want to now get into, this chart right here, the one that we kind of started things off with. This is CME, and CME is going to be closing for the week in about 13 hours, actually 13 hours and 40 minutes. And we can see that if Bitcoin closes anywhere here or higher, there is going to be a drive of hidden bullish divergence. Actually, this is going to be in addition to the 5-day time frame as well, which actually has already confirmed a drive of hidden bullish divergence, which is measuring the low from actually all the way in January when I already have it circled off. Nice one. The low of January when Bitcoin was trading at about $40,000 versus this low here at about $60,000, which is a pretty significant divergence actually. 20,000. It's not every day that you see a divergence of $20,000, but it's in there. At the end of the day, it is trend, and the trend is your friend. And this would be suggesting that, hey, if you are bullish, then yes, that was the low. We do not expect things to go any lower than that, really. In fact, probably not even retracing that much from its current stature. I do think Bitcoin can maybe play out a move down to mid 62, worst case scenario. But as long as Bitcoin's above there, this is looking like the pullback before the next move to the upside. It's just a little bit of it feels very uneventful. I mean, it feels very, very boring right now, by the way. Even though Bitcoin is kind of doing what I think a lot of people are hoping that it's that it is going to do. So ultimately, what can we kind of deduce from this? Like, can I put in some more conjecture in this? Yes, absolutely. Basically, again, if you are bullish, you really don't expect Bitcoin to be trading that much lower than where it currently is right now, and certainly not lower than the last 5-day low, which is actually below $60,000. But I would even say 62,500 would be kind of like a major baseline. Look, as long as Bitcoin's above there, it's likely, it's more probabilistically speaking, likely that Bitcoin is going to continue up and to the right, maybe later on in next week. Obviously this week is pretty much over anyways. So the grind continues. And the weekly signal, again, will be confirmed anywhere here or higher, basically anywhere above $64,000 by the end of the closure tonight. I'm sure a lot of people are going to be very concerned about the gap, the old gapola right there, which, more often than not, things do get filled, but not always. In fact, on the most important breakouts, gaps do not get retested, actually. In fact, you can find several examples with Bitcoin back around from 2020, I think, and even 2018 as well, that are unfilled gaps from much lower, like in the $3,000 territory. Unlikely that those get filled. And of course, in traditional markets, you can find gaps, that have not been filled for 20, 30, 40 years. And it's just it's possible, I guess, but I wouldn't be betting on it. And certainly if I would have just, blindly shorted saying that, hey, gaps must be filled because I read it on the internets, it's going to lead towards a very sore bunghole, actually. At least that's what I would imagine. All right, sweet. So let's move on to the next chart right here. This one is a revisiting of the 5-day setup. We've been looking at this 5-day setup for Bitcoin. I do want to, point out that the 5-day time frame stochastic momentum oscillator has actually positioned back onto the upside with this last 5-day closure last night. And actually, what's very interesting to me right here is that the pivot for the 5-day stochastic oscillator to now turn down has actually moved significantly down. So yesterday, I believe it was like 62,250. Now it is 59,200. So did I say 69,000? I meant 62,250. So about oh my God, I literally cannot even do math right now. It's $3,000, $3,000 difference right there. So, what does that mean? It typically, when we see the pivot actually move down, that's supportive of price action continuing in the current direction. So that would be supportive again of upside here as 59,200 becomes a new pivot. Also, we can kind of look at this as a trend line regression test. Not perfect right here. I mean, as a regression would imply. Let me actually get back to the right. I don't even have it on this proper chart. In fact, maybe we'll just sidestep that point, because honestly, it does look like, well, yeah, if we did draw a regression in here from like basically 2022, yeah, you would kind of be right around that region. But I think in this particular case, I'm going to not go with that. Not super obvious right there. And I don't think that that's wise to be doing. Anyways, just speaking to myself as we go through this video. But ultimately, this provides the possibility that we're actually going to see a 5-day setup emerge to the upside here, as volatility is looking like it wants to go back into a contraction phase. It's not there just yet, but it very well could. And obviously, if volatility goes back into a contraction phase, we see it back at extreme lows below 15 percentile, then this 5-day setup is going to favor the upside, obviously. And just, as an aside, the market in general, the more that I look at it, for Bitcoin especially, is just a series of 5-day setups, both the upside and the downside. And that has basically been the major driver of price action almost on every major move. I mean, it's hard to find an example where that's just not true. So it is interesting to me to see things, once again, go back into very likely contraction phase. And what's going to emerge from there? Well, I would imagine that is going to be an upside setup, which again, it's not going to fire off. Probably not even this month, actually. It's probably not even be this month. I mean, it'd take at least, probably at least 2 closures to get this back into fully contracted mode, maybe even 3. So that's going to be 10 to 15 days from now. So that brings us into like the first week of August. And then from there, it's probably another few closures until you actually see expansion. So that's like another 15 days. So you're probably looking at like mid-August before, a major explosive move could realistically occur. So I do think things are going to get boring from here. I do think that is going to generally be good for the BULAs. But, just kind of be aware of what you're likely in for, because it's kind of like a little bit less than a month, about 3 weeks, three to 4 weeks of mostly sideways, not doing a whole hell of a lot is going to be absolutely terrible for the mentality, for the psychology of many market participants, probably myself included here too. Anyways, so we've gone through that. Let's actually now go down the list, because I do believe that for today, CME is again going to be closing a weekly, and it's actually going to potentially confirm a weekly stochastic momentum across the upside here as well. The pivot as of right now is 64,600. So it's actually technically below. It's about $400 below. It's a long day left to trade. Even if it did, not technically cross up or fulfill that pivot coming into this next, into tonight's closure, I think next week is very likely to provide, that impetus for a turnaround. Again, we will see another trendline regression here. This one's a lot more of an obvious one, coming in from July of 2022, matched with the September of 2023 low. So very likely at least a major bounce around this region, and perhaps even the next sort of major macro low. So ultimately, hey, get the fuck out of there. Ultimately, the wheels are turning in the background to not just favor the bulls, but favor the bulls for like a major breakout. Again, probably later in August. It's probably going to take its time. Anyways, at least that would be my sort of my sort of synopsis from that. Anyways, last thing for Bitcoin, and then we'll get on to some other things for the market just in general. We can see the 5-day time frame again closing for Bitcoin here. We are going to see that the median is going to be a natural magnet for price action here. We are seeing HPDRV week go back into a contraction phase. We expect BBWP to kind of follow as well. These things should be kind of following each other. So I suspect that is going to hold true. And if we do see volatility contraction, we should expect to move somewhere around the median, which the median right now is 68,650. Again, doesn't necessarily have to happen in the next period or two, but overall, that's just going to be a general area of interest for current price action to fulfill. And we really wouldn't expect anywhere below the 38.2 level in this particular instance, actually a little bit lower than the area that I was kind of speaking about earlier at 62.5, but that one is officially at 61,200. So, maybe be aware of that one as well. Daily time frame, we can see just an obvious consolidation going on right here. I do suspect that, we're going to kind of be range bound on this current consolidation while the current median starts to meet up with current price action. So, that's going to take some time, probably into next week, I suspect. So I really wouldn't be expecting anything like significant between now and then, as Bitcoin kind of puts in time between, let's call it like 62.5 on the bottom end versus about $66,000 on the higher end. Just kind of be expecting Bitcoin to kind of bounce and play ping pong between those two boundaries for the next, I don't know, half week to maybe even the next full week could very well be. But ultimately, again, that is going to favor the blue laws long term. We just really don't want to see below about 62.5 on any sort of a daily closing basis. That will call into question the validity of this current low. Until then, I think it is just generally wise to be running with the idea that that was likely it. Of course, all ideas come with an invalidation, and that would be the invalidation for that. All right, so now that we've gone through that, I do want to be looking across the general market here because I did find something very, very interesting with one of our favorite shitcoins, baby. One of our favorite shitcoins, which is Solana, the Solana shitcoin. This one very interesting to me today because it actually has made a new high on this rally. It's very obviously putting in a more long-term accumulation zone right here. Did not make new lows, by the way, below its May lows. It basically just retested those lows. So again, ultimately, this is this one showing a little bit of relative strength. Does that imply that we see Solana outpace Bitcoin to the upside? I mean, probably yes, if Bitcoin, assuming Bitcoin does hold it steady, and especially if Bitcoin moves the upside. We can look at the Solana Bitcoin pairing right here, and we can see that this one, again, this one's been consolidating for a while now. It does have a nice higher low in on the weekly time frame. We are going to see momentum turn back up as well freshly here. This is a hard chart to hate with extremely low volatility on the weekly as well. Like this one's setting up for an explosive move. I think the monthly has another explosive move to new highs here, probably at least retesting prior all-time highs and maybe even making new all-time highs long term. It could very well be, but for now, Solana is showing some relative strength. So do we see like the Solana shitcoin start to take over again, and we see some, that sort of excitement come back into the market? Maybe. I suspect that if Bitcoin does hold sideways, you probably will see those things operate generally well. So yeah, just something I wanted to point out. Contrast that with Ethereum's chart. Ethereum still kind of acting as a laggard here. Honestly, despite getting an ETF, or I think it's going to get an ETF at least. It should be coming relatively soon. But yeah, Ethereum still hasn't really played catch up, which is rather interesting to me. So relatively weak still. If we look at the Ethereum Bitcoin pairing, I'm curious to see what we actually will see here. And Jesus, man, this one just cannot catch a break. I do think it'll ultimately push through here. I do think that it likely has its lows in, but man, it is certainly taking its sweet time. But I actually would be running with the assumption that, yeah, this one is going to trade to the upside, and you can probably look at your July lows as like the low. Of course, as always, there's no certainties, but there is invalidations. And if you do see any sort of a trade below the July lows, well, not only is that not the low, but this is probably the next major high, and you will see this one trade down towards new lows from your May lows. But for right now, I'd probably give it the benefit of the doubt, as I would most things in this market, just kind of granted the general sphere. So I think that's going to do it for today. We're actually going to be traveling a bit, so I do apologize if you're trying to reach out later today. I won't really be too much available, nor will Elsa, but we will do our best to get back to you at like a reasonable time. We're actually gonna be going to Elsa's sister's wedding on Saturday. How about that? Anyways, yeah, so we'll be gone for a little bit of time, and then back in action. So yeah, that'll do it for today. As always, I want to wish everyone the best. Bitcoin coming down here a little bit in the short term. So do we see a move towards that 62.5 region? Perhaps yes. Still what I'm kind of banking on as of right now. But yeah, that's where I'll end things on this video. As always, I want to wish you the best. Take care, much love, and see you hopefully next time.